Hi, CEO of Budweiser. I want to go over a quick analysis over the breweries and beers in the United States. So we looked at so me and my team looked at the beer count in the United States, and we saw that Colorado and California have the most breweries out there by far. We saw that Colorado had over 40 plus breweries, while California had under. A surprising fact that we noticed was Washington D.C., North Dakota, South Dakota, and West Virginia had the least breweries at the same rate. So we noticed that those four were not as high as Colorado or California, not even in mid. So so we wanted to look at the kind of some of the missing values of IBU, and we had a really great amount of missing values between IBU and ABV, and I wanted to kind of see how those numbers would affect our analysis. And we noticed that the medium alcohol content there has slowly dropped in the medium ABV value, with the greatest states being DC, New Jersey, Utah, and lower medium. The ABV value of the rest of the states shown like generally a consistent average between the two, where the medium ABV was around a little bit under 0.6%. And we saw that some of the higher states, such as DC, such as Kentucky, and others, we noticed that the APV was at a very, very modest rate. So wanted to look at the highest ABV in IBU beers, and we noticed that some of the highest content of beer was the Quadruple, and we saw another max on the IBU, the American Double Imperial IPA, or the another name you can call it is Astoria. So something that was very interesting to me and my team was we wanted to see the normal distribution of what the beer summary was going to show. So as we looked into the ABV, we started to notice that a lot of kind of Midwestern states had a very high, or Midwestern or Southern states had a very high content of beer. So we noticed that Arkansas, Alabama, Arizona, Colorado, we noticed that those states in particular had a much larger rate than some of the states such as Virginia, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. And we noticed that, and we also noticed that the larger the larger the context, the lower the count was. So we noticed that as well. We thought that was a very significant find. Each state ABV value are normally were distributed. Besides, Utah and Delaware have more unique distributions than the rest of the states, and we couldn't figure out what that particular reason was. But we noticed that was a significant data, so we tried to do our research to get back. We also looked at a very unique thing about between ABV and IBU. As alcoholic content has gone up, the bitterness tended to increase as well. So we saw a large factory of those relationships around like a 10% alcohol quality, and we looked at on why this was. This can be due to the yeast amount. This was due to what states were producing the most. California was one of those states, or California and Colorado were one of those states that were brewing the most, so they showed the more kind of accuracy of alcohol context going above the 10%, and showing that those 10% would go above the IBU of 100. So we started to see more of those correlations, and we saw like a positive correlation as the alcoholic content went up, the bitterness went up as well. The LEO beers versus IPAs, those were positively correlated between ABV and IBU. However, there was a distinct difference between the ABV IBU, and we noticed that the considerable in styles of beers of K&M model is roughly around 83%. So we accurately predict that the beer is an ALE or an IPA based on the beer's ABV and IBV values. So that was something that was very interesting, and we saw a very positive correlation, linear regression correlation between the two. We also looked into the ABB comparisons. We looked at the p-value and the difference between those p-values. We looked at comparing California and Wisconsin, where we saw a p-value of 4%, and we saw a difference between less than 7%. So we thought that was a very interesting find. We did those calculations, and we made a pretty cure t-test to figure that out. Thank you. And if you, yep.